I never thought a plain cardboard box could change my life. But there it was, sitting on my front porch like it had been dropped by a ghost. No return address. No company name. Just my name, printed neatly in black marker. At first, I figured it was some late delivery, something Laura ordered and forgot to tell me about. She was always buying little things, candles, shoes, useless gadgets she thought we needed. But when I picked up the box, a chill ran down my spine. It was too light, too quiet, like it was holding its breath. I carried it inside, setting it on the kitchen table. For a few seconds, I just stared at it. Then, without thinking too much, I grabbed a knife and cut it open. Inside was a flash drive. That was it. No letter, no instructions. Just a plain silver drive tucked inside a folded sheet of bubble wrap. I turned it over in my hand. It was new, untouched, waiting. Laura wouldn't have sent this to me. That much I knew. And whoever sent it didn't want to be found. My gut screamed at me to throw it out. But curiosity won. I slid it into my laptop, my heart hammering against my ribs. A single file appeared. Watch ME. I clicked. The screen went black for a second, then a video started to play. Grainy at first, like footage from a cheap security camera. The view was a small office. A conference table. Two people sitting close together. Laura, and a man I didn't recognize. Slick hair. Smug smile. Expensive-looking watch. I leaned closer, the blood draining from my face. They were talking. Whispering. Really? He's too trusting, the man said, grinning. He'll sign whatever you put in front of him. Laura laughed. My wife, the woman I'd built my life with, laughed. A low, cruel laugh I'd never heard before. He thinks I still love him, she said, twirling a pin between her fingers. That's the beauty of it. The man leaned in, lowering his voice. We'll draw up the new prenup first. We get him to sign. We get the house, the investments, the lake property. You file in 6 months. By then, you'll have everything. I sat there frozen. Every word hit like a hammer to the chest. It wasn't just an affair. It was a setup, a full-blown betrayal, carefully planned, cold-blooded. Laura nodded in the video, her smile sharp. I'll cry a little at the hearing, she said. Make it look like he blindsided me. Play the victim. Judges eat that stuff up. They both laughed. The video ended. The room was dead silent around me, except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. I sat there for a long time, staring at the frozen frame of my wife's smiling face. A part of me wanted to scream. Another part wanted to vomit. But mostly, what I felt was a cold, clear silence inside me, like a switch had been flipped. This wasn't just cheating. This wasn't just a broken marriage. This was war. I closed the laptop gently, my hands surprisingly steady. I stared out the window at the darkening sky, thinking about the years I'd spent building a life with her. The overtime, the vacations I skipped, the little things I forgave. All of it, every sacrifice, had been used against me. Laura thought she knew me. She thought I was some harmless fool she could play until the money was in her pocket. But she was wrong. She didn't know the real me. Not yet. I stood up, feeling something hard and unfamiliar settle into my bones. If Laura and her boyfriend wanted a game, they were going to get one. But it wouldn't end the way they thought. I picked up the flash drive, slipped it back into the bubble wrap, and tucked it deep inside my desk drawer. I wasn't going to confront her. Not yet. No. I was going to do something much, much better. I was going to let them think they were winning. And then, when the time was right, I'd tear their little world apart, piece by piece. The hardest part was pretending everything was normal. Sitting across from Laura at dinner that night, stirring my mashed potatoes, nodding at her stories about work, smiling when she teased me about the lawn needing mowing. I watched her talk, watched the way she avoided eye contact just a little too much, the way her fingers tapped a nervous rhythm against her wine glass. If I hadn't known what I knew, I might have missed it. But now I saw everything, every lie, every shift of her shoulders, every fake smile. And it didn't even make me sad. Not anymore. It made me focused. Laura had a plan, and so did I. I excused myself from the table halfway through dinner, pretending to get a work call. Instead, I locked myself in the upstairs office and pulled out a notepad. Step 1. Confirm the players. I didn't know the man's name yet, the one sitting with her in the video, but I intended to find out. No doubt he was the one helping her draw up the new documents they mentioned. I opened her laptop. The password hadn't changed. That said a lot. She thought she still had control. In less than 5 minutes, I found an email thread titled Prenuptial Adjustments. Bingo. The sender was a man named Ethan Callahan, a real estate lawyer from a firm 2 towns over. I copied everything, emails, attachments, drafts of documents, onto a flash drive of my own. Evidence. Cold, solid, undeniable evidence. Step 2. Secure my assets. If they thought they were going to bleed me dry, they were going to find out how wrong they were. I logged into my financial accounts, The ones I had managed for years while Laura blissfully ignored anything involving paperwork or taxes. The good news? Most of it was still solely under my name. The bad news? Laura was about to try to change that. I contacted a friend from college, someone who had gone into corporate law and owed me a favor. We set a meeting for Friday. Quiet, discreet, exactly what I needed. Step 3. Play dumb. Act like the loving, clueless husband she believed me to be. Keep her confident. Keep her feeling powerful. The more she thought she was winning, the better my victory would be. When I came back downstairs, Laura was curled up on the couch watching one of those reality shows she loved, the kind where people screamed at each other over petty drama. She looked up and smiled. "Everything okay with work?" she asked, fake concern flickering across her face. "Yeah," I said easily. "Just a minor crisis. Handled it." "Good," she said, leaning back into the cushions. I sat beside her and put my arm around her shoulders. For a moment, she tensed, a brief, involuntary flinch. Then she relaxed, slipping back into the role of the devoted wife. I held her a little tighter than usual, feeling the way her heart beat faster against my side. Good. Let her wonder. Let her feel just a little uneasy, but not enough to suspect anything real. Not yet. Later that night, as she slept beside me, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. Not because I was heartbroken. Not because I missed her. Those feelings had burned out the moment I saw that video. No, what kept me awake was the planning. The pieces falling into place. Laura thought she was a shark swimming circles around a wounded man. She didn't realize she was standing in the middle of a minefield, and I was the one planting the charges. When the time was right, when she thought she had everything locked down, I would detonate it all. No rage, no shouting, just cold, quiet facts. And the sound of her entire world crumbling beneath her feet. I turned my head slightly, looking at her sleeping face in the dim light. Peaceful, untroubled, arrogant. She had no idea. But soon, very soon, she would. You don't spend 22 years with someone without building a mountain of memories. Some good, some bad, and some so tangled up you can't even tell which was which anymore. Lying there in the dark, I couldn't help but remember. When Laura and I first met, she was magnetic, the kind of woman who could walk into a room and change the temperature. She wasn't the loudest or the flashiest, but there was something about her, the way she smiled, the way she made you feel like you were the only person that mattered. I fell hard, faster than I ever thought I would. We dated for a year, married after 2. Back then, we didn't have much. We lived in a cramped apartment above a laundromat, eating frozen pizzas and dreaming about the life we'd built. And we did build it, brick by brick. I took the overtime. She worked weekends. We scrimped and saved until we could afford a down payment on our first house, the same house she was now plotting to steal from me. I thought we were a team. I thought we were forever. But somewhere along the way, forever started slipping through our fingers. At first, it was little things. Her laughter when she looked at her phone and quickly locked it. The sudden trips to visit her sister that didn't quite line up with her sister's social media posts. The expensive clothes she bought under the excuse of work events. I told myself it was stress, or midlife restlessness, or anything but what it actually was, because the truth was too ugly to look at. Until now. I turned my head on the pillow and stared at Laura's sleeping form. She shifted slightly, murmuring something in her dreams, and my stomach twisted. Had she ever really loved me? Or had I just been a stepping stone, someone to help her climb to wherever she thought she deserved to be? The bitter truth lodged itself deeper into my chest. Maybe it didn't even matter. What mattered was that I knew now. I saw her clearly for the first time in years. And she didn't know I was watching. The next morning, I woke up before her. I always did. Laura liked her long, lazy mornings, staying in bed, scrolling through her phone, pretending she was too sleepy to deal with the real world. I brewed coffee in the kitchen, the rich smell filling the house. As I stirred my cup, a plan began to solidify. I couldn't just walk away. Not like this. Not quietly. She needed to feel the full weight of what she'd done, and that meant playing the long game, keeping her comfortable, keeping her confident, until the moment I pulled the rug out from under her. Over breakfast, Laura chatted casually about a conference she needed to attend next month, might even have to stay overnight, and I nodded along like the good little husband she still thought I was. In my mind, I pictured Ethan Callahan's smug face. I pictured the emails, the contracts, the fake prenup. I pictured the day they thought they would finally beat me, and I smiled. Not the broken kind of smile. Not the smile of a man giving up. The smile of a man sharpening his sword in the dark. That afternoon, while Laura was meeting a client, I made my own quiet moves. I met with my old friend, Michael Hayes, the corporate lawyer. We sat in a back booth at a greasy diner off Route 9, sipping terrible coffee and speaking in low voices. I handed him the flash drive. He plugged it into his laptop, frowning as he watched the video play. When it ended, he closed the laptop slowly and looked at me. "You sure you want to play it this way?" he asked. I nodded once. "No mercy," I said. "Not this time." He smiled grimly. "I'll start working on it. She won't know what hit her." Good. That was the idea. When I got home, Laura was lounging on the couch in leggings and an oversized sweater, scrolling through her phone, sipping wine. She glanced up at me with a lazy smile. "Hey, babe, how was your day?" I smiled back, easy and calm. "Perfect," I said. And it was, because every minute that passed, every fake smile I gave her, every casual conversation we shared, it all brought me closer to the moment when everything she thought she had would come crashing down, and I would be there to watch it, without lifting a finger. If Laura noticed the small changes, she didn't show it. Maybe she was too distracted by her daydreams of freedom and money. Maybe she really thought I was still the same blind, trusting fool she'd married. Either way, it worked to my advantage. Because while she played her little games, I was playing a much bigger one. First, I moved the money, quietly, carefully. Accounts she didn't even know existed were drained and closed. Assets were shifted into trust with names she couldn't trace. The savings account she did know about? I left it alone. Let her think it was still sitting there, fat and ripe for the taking. I canceled the automatic transfers to our joint investments, redirected payments, locked down anything tied to my name. By the time I was done, she could have sued me into the ground and still walked away with nothing but air. It was surgical, precise, and completely invisible. Meanwhile, I played my part at home. I complimented her new dresses. I listened to her stories about work drama, probably code for whatever lies she was spinning that week. I even suggested we take a weekend trip soon, just the two of us. Her eyes lit up at that. Not because she wanted quality time with me, because in her mind, it was another chance to push her plan forward. "Maybe somewhere nice," she said, twirling her wine glass. "Somewhere we could relax and talk about the future." I nodded, smiling. "Oh, we'll definitely talk about the future." In the evenings, when she thought I was busy working in the study, I would sit quietly, going over everything again and again. The flash drive, the emails, the drafts of the adjusted prenuptial agreement Ethan Callahan had been preparing. They were cocky, the two of them, sloppy, even. They thought they were so clever, slipping language into the new documents that would effectively hand Laura control over nearly everything we owned. It would have been laughable if it wasn't so insulting. They underestimated me, both of them, and they were going to regret that. The more I played along, the bolder Laura became. One night she came home late, hair mussed, cheeks flushed, wearing perfume that wasn't hers. She gave me a quick kiss on the cheek, the same way you'd pat a dog on the head, and mumbled something about a client dinner. I just smiled and handed her a glass of wine. "Long night?" I asked gently. She shrugged. "Work is crazy lately." I nodded, pretending to believe her. "You're amazing," I said, kissing her forehead. "I don't know how you do it all." Her eyes softened. For a second, I wondered if she even felt the tiniest pang of guilt. But no. The only thing Laura loved more than herself was the idea of getting everything she thought she deserved. She didn't want me. She wanted the life I had built. The security, the money, the easy story she could tell her friends later about how she tried, but had to leave for her own happiness. I wasn't angry anymore. I was beyond anger. I was patient. 2 weeks later, Laura floated the idea over dinner. "You know," she said, swirling pasta on her fork, "I was thinking, maybe it's time we update some of our documents. You know, wills, powers of attorney, that kind of stuff." I raised an eyebrow. "Oh." She nodded, all casual innocence. "Just being responsible. It's smart, right? Especially with everything going on." Everything going on. What she meant was, before she made her move and needed her name on everything. I smiled warmly. "That's a great idea, honey. Let's set up a meeting." Her face practically glowed. She thought she was winning. She had no idea the paperwork she was so eager to finalize would be the noose tightening around her neck. Later that night, after she went to bed, I sat at the kitchen table in the dark, sipping a glass of scotch. I pulled out my phone and sent a single text to Michael Hayes. "The meeting is on. Time to bring the hammer down." He replied almost instantly. "Understood. Final phase ready." I set the phone down and leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. It was almost funny. All the years I spent trying to protect this marriage. All the nights I forgave the coldness, the distance, the little hurts. And now, in the end, it wasn't rage that was going to end us. It was calculation. It was silence. Laura thought she had built the perfect trap. She didn't realize she was the one walking straight into mine. The next 2 weeks were a masterclass in patience. Laura buzzed around the house in high spirits, completely convinced her plan was working. She booked spa appointments, shopped online for new furniture she would never get to keep. She even started talking about maybe downsizing, a polite way of saying she planned to sell the house and pocket the money. I smiled and agreed to everything. Whatever makes you happy, I told her. And she beamed, kissing my cheek like the loyal wife she pretended to be. I didn't even flinch anymore. Every fake kiss, every fake smile, it was just another drop in the bucket. Another reason I was going to savor the ending. The fake legal meeting was set. A Saturday afternoon. At a nice conference room downtown. Michael Hayes had arranged it through a third-party firm, all perfectly legitimate on the surface. Laura thought we were going there to update our documents. In reality, we were walking into the first act of her downfall. The plan was simple. She would sit down, confident, pen in hand, ready to sign what she thought was a new, favorable agreement. Instead, she'd be handed a full disclosure packet, one outlining every lie, every betrayal, every shady scheme she and Ethan Callahan had cooked up. And witnesses would be there. A notary, an independent mediator, a court recorder, even 2 family friends Michael had arranged discreetly listed as character witnesses under the paperwork. It was all going to be official, documented, incontrovertible. No screaming, no accusations, just facts. The night before the meeting, Laura was practically glowing. She poured us both a glass of wine, curled up next to me on the couch, and leaned her head against my shoulder. You know, she said softly, I really think this next chapter of our lives is going to be amazing. I kissed the top of her head. I think you're right. She smiled up at me, a warm, trusting smile. The kind of smile you give someone when you think you've won. And for a second, just a second, I almost pitied her. Almost. But then I remembered the video. Her laughing with another man about how easy it would be to rob me blind. And the pity turned to stone. The morning of the meeting, Laura was up early, carefully doing her makeup, curling her hair, choosing the perfect dress. She wanted to look perfect for her new future. I wore a simple dark suit, clean, crisp, professional. As we drove downtown, she chattered on about maybe buying a small condo closer to the beach once everything was settled. I nodded along, offering the occasional grunt or smile where needed. Inside, I felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness, just cold clarity. The conference room was perfect. Sleek glass walls, mahogany table, neutral decor. Professional, but not too intimidating. Laura looked around approvingly. I'm glad we're doing this the right way, she said, smoothing her dress. I pulled out a chair for her. Of course, I said. The notary was already waiting at the head of the table, a woman in a gray blazer, expression unreadable. 2 others sat near her, the mediator and a legal assistant with a slim recording device. Michael wasn't present, by design. He wanted everything to seem neutral until it was too late for Laura to react. The assistant slid 2 thick folders across the table. One to me, one to Laura. These are the updated agreements for review, she said smoothly. We'll walk through them together. Laura smiled brightly, flipping open her folder. I didn't touch mine. I just watched her. For the first few pages, she was fine. Standard information, financial summaries, declarations of marital assets. But then page 7. Her eyes slowed. Her mouth twitched. Page 8. Page 9. I watched the exact moment her brain caught up to what she was reading. It was all there. The transcript of her conversation with Ethan Callahan. Screenshots of their emails. Evidence of their plot to defraud me. Affidavits confirming the assets were protected in trust she couldn't touch. And worst of all, a pre-signed legal motion requesting sanctions against both her and Ethan for attempted fraud, ready to be filed the moment she made a wrong move. The blood drained from her face. She looked up at me, eyes wide, mouth slightly open. I gave her a slow, polite smile. Is something wrong, Laura? She blinked rapidly, trying to form words. But there were none. For the first time in a long time, she was speechless. And this was just the beginning. The silence in the room was thick enough to choke on. Laura stared at the papers in front of her, her fingers trembling slightly as she flipped back and forth between pages, searching for some kind of lifeline. There wasn't one. Every angle was covered, every loophole sealed, every betrayal exposed. Her head snapped up, her eyes wide and panicked. Derek, she whispered, her voice cracking. What is this? I leaned back in my chair, folding my hands calmly on the table. I think it's pretty clear, I said. You wanted to talk about our future, remember? The mediator spoke up then, her voice calm and neutral. Mrs. Langford, these documents outline the situation surrounding your and Mr. Langford's marital assets, as well as documented evidence of attempted fraud. You are welcome to review them thoroughly or request counsel before proceeding. Laura shook her head rapidly, her breathing shallow. This is a mistake, she said, her voice rising. I don't understand. I cut her off, my tone still polite, almost gentle. You don't understand? Let me help. I tapped the folder lightly with my finger. You and Ethan Callahan conspired to rob me blind. You planned to manipulate me into signing away everything I worked for. You laughed about it. You bragged about it. I shrugged. And now, you're caught. Her face crumpled for a second, a flash of pure panic, before she tried to regroup, pulling herself upright. This isn't what it looks like, she said desperately. I wasn't serious. It was just stupid venting. Ethan was joking. Save it, I said quietly. No anger, no yelling, just cold dismissal. You made your choices. Now you live with them. The notary shifted slightly, preparing the next steps. The legal assistant placed a pin neatly in front of Laura. You are not obligated to sign today, she said formally. But understand, refusal to acknowledge these findings will result in immediate legal action, including but not limited to fraud charges. Laura's mouth worked soundlessly for a moment. She looked at me, really looked at me, and realized, maybe for the first time, that the man sitting across from her wasn't the fool she thought he was. He was something else entirely. She started, her voice cracking again. Can we talk? Alone? I smiled, slow and cold. Everything that needs to be said is already in that folder. Laura. She looked around the room, desperate, but found no help. The witnesses remained silent, professional, impartial. There would be no saving her here. Finally, she bowed her head. Her shoulders sagged as she picked up the pen with trembling fingers. The sound of the pen scratching across the page was the sweetest sound I had ever heard. Final, inevitable, justice. When the signing was done, the mediator gathered the documents, stamped them, and stood. Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Langford. We will file the necessary paperwork by Monday morning. Laura just sat there, looking like a ghost, her hands folded tightly in her lap. I stood, buttoned my jacket, and slipped the original flash drive into my pocket. As I turned to leave, I paused beside her. You know, I said quietly, so only she could hear, I really did love you once. She looked up at me then, tears starting to gather in her eyes. But the woman I loved, I continued, never existed. And with that, I walked out. The sun was bright outside, almost blinding after the coldness of the conference room. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the crisp afternoon air. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt light, free. Laura's world was collapsing behind me. The fake lawyer boyfriend? Once the fraud charges started rolling, he'd be disbarred faster than he could blink. Laura? She'd walk away with nothing but her name, and even that would be stained. And me? I was already gone. Driving home, I thought about everything that had happened. The lies, the betrayal, the months of pretending. It could have destroyed me, but it hadn't. If anything, it had forged me into something stronger, something colder, wiser, untouchable. I turned the radio up and rolled the window down, letting the wind whip through the car. Laura might have thought she was building a new life at my expense, but all she had really built was her own downfall, and I had handed it to her with a smile. It didn't take long for the cracks to show. In fact, it happened faster than I expected. By the following Friday, Ethan Callahan's name was plastered all over the local legal news. Real estate lawyer under investigation for fraud and professional misconduct. The story spread like wildfire. By Monday, his firm had scrubbed his profile from their website. By Wednesday, he was suspended pending full disbarment. Laura's dream team was crumbling before she even had time to plot her next move. I heard about it the same way everyone else did, through forwarded news articles and a few gleeful phone calls from mutual acquaintances who assumed I was just another poor, betrayed husband stumbling through the wreckage. They didn't know. They had no idea this wasn't destruction for me. It was a clean break, a controlled demolition. As for Laura, the fallout was even uglier. Without Ethan pulling the strings, her attempts to fight the divorce terms collapsed almost immediately. Every appeal, every desperate motion filed through her new, second-rate attorney was shut down hard. The prenup she had schemed to replace? Invalid. The marital assets she thought she could steal? Locked up tight, out of her reach. Worse still, once the fraud came to light, Laura lost any chance of sympathy in court. The judge saw right through her carefully rehearsed tears. When the final ruling came down, it was brutal. She got nothing but her personal belongings, the clothes, the furniture she bought herself, the junk she couldn't pawn off as joint property. No house, no investments, no alimony, nothing. Just the cold, hard justice she deserved. I didn't gloat. Not publicly. I let the system do what it was designed to do. I stayed silent, professional, unshakable. Meanwhile, Laura's life fell apart, piece by piece. The friends who once gossiped with her at brunches stopped returning her calls. The whispers followed her everywhere, at the gym, at the grocery store, even at the local wine bar where she used to hold court like a queen. When betrayal is exposed, it leaves a stain no amount of makeup or designer clothes can cover. And Laura? She was drowning in it. I found out through a mutual friend, purely by accident, that she moved into a cramped 2-bedroom apartment across town. No more 4-bedroom house. No more spa weekends. No more luxury SUVs. She picked up a part-time job as an office assistant for a small firm, a far cry from the executive lifestyle she once bragged about. And Ethan? He vanished. Rumor had it he skipped town the moment the investigation heated up, leaving Laura holding the bag. No love story, no partnership, just betrayal on top of betrayal. Exactly what she had planned for me. One evening, about 3 weeks after everything was finalized, I saw her. It wasn't intentional. I was grabbing groceries, real groceries, not the takeout and frozen dinners that had kept me alive during the last few miserable months of our marriage, when I turned a corner and almost ran right into her. She looked different. The makeup couldn't hide the exhaustion in her eyes. The expensive handbag hanging from her shoulder looked out of place against the cheap, wrinkled jacket she wore. Her shoulders hunched as if she was bracing for impact. For a split second, she looked at me, really looked at me. There was no anger, no smugness, just something hollow, something broken. She opened her mouth, maybe to say something, an apology, an excuse. I'll never know, but I didn't give her the chance. I just smiled, nodded politely, and pushed my cart right past her. No words, no confrontation, just silence. The final nail in the coffin. Driving home that night, I felt something unexpected. Not glee, not even satisfaction, just peace. A deep, quiet peace I hadn't felt in years. Laura had made her choices, and now she was living with them. I didn't have to destroy her. She did it all herself. All I did was make sure she couldn't drag me down with her. And now, for the first time in a long, long time, I was free. 2 weeks after that chance encounter at the grocery store, the last piece fell into place. It came in the form of a letter, not from Laura, not from Ethan, but from a court clerk. Inside was confirmation. The fraud case against Ethan Callahan had been escalated. Laura's name was included in the investigation, not as a primary defendant, but as a complicit party, which meant her slim chances of ever clawing her way back into her old social circles were officially dead. The letter slipped through my fingers and onto the kitchen counter as I poured myself a cup of coffee. No smile, no celebration, just a deep, complete sense of closure. It was over, truly over. Laura tried, of course. One last gasp. A desperate 2 a.m. email sent to an account she thought I still checked, begging for a meeting. The message was long, rambling, incoherent in places. Half apology, half manipulation. She blamed stress. She blamed loneliness. She blamed Ethan. She even tried to appeal to all the good years we shared. We can fix this, she wrote. I made mistakes, but deep down, I never stopped loving you. For a moment, I sat there staring at the screen, my coffee cooling in my hand. 5 years ago, maybe even 1 year ago, that email would have torn me apart. Now, it was just sad, pathetic, even, because the woman writing those words wasn't the woman I married. That woman had died a long time ago, buried under lies, greed, and betrayal. This ghost that remained wasn't my problem anymore. I closed the laptop without replying, deleted the email, blocked the address, and just like that, her last attempt to slither back into my life disappeared, as easily as pressing a key. Finality came quietly. No explosions, no dramatic showdowns, just a slow, steady erasure of her from my life. The house, my house, stood exactly the way it always had. Calm, solid, without her clutter, without her perfume hanging in the air, without her presence gnawing at the edges of my sanity. Just peace. I spent evenings sitting on the back porch, a beer in hand, listening to the wind move through the trees, something I hadn't done in years. The man I used to be, the one who built everything from nothing, was still here, stronger than ever. And Laura? She was nothing but a bad memory. News about Ethan's final disbarment came about a month later. It made the local papers again. Fraud scandal ends career of prominent real estate lawyer. I didn't even bother reading the article. The headline was enough. Laura's former partner in crime was officially a ghost, unhireable, untrustworthy, untouchable. I heard through the grapevine that she tried reaching out to him once the dust settled. He didn't answer, didn't return her calls, didn't even acknowledge her existence. In the end, he used her just as ruthlessly as she had tried to use me. Poetic, really, fitting. The last time I saw Laura was purely by accident, months later. I was grabbing lunch with some old friends at a new restaurant on Main Street, laughing, joking, starting to truly feel normal again, when I spotted her through the window. She was walking down the sidewalk alone, head down, cheap coat pulled tight against the wind, a grocery bag clutched against her chest like a shield. No friends, no luxury car, no new life, just her, and the consequences she had earned. She didn't see me, or if she did, she didn't dare look twice. And I didn't wave, didn't smirk, didn't shout something petty across the street. I simply turned back to my friends and laughed at the joke someone had just told. Because that was the final blow. Really, not revenge. not punishment. Indifference. Laura had spent so long trying to tear me down, to steal my life, my future, my dignity. But in the end, she couldn't take a thing from me. I was still standing. I was still building. And she was nothing but a footnote in a story I was already rewriting without her. Over the next few months, it was like Laura evaporated from the world we once shared. Our mutual friends stopped mentioning her completely, not out of loyalty to me, but because she was no longer someone they wanted to be associated with. Her social media accounts, once filled with vacation selfies and living my best life quotes, went dark. The few posts that remained were hollow and desperate, begging for attention that never came. I didn't check often, but every now and then, a notification or a comment from someone would cross my screen. Another reminder that while my life was moving forward, hers was stuck sinking deeper into the mud she had made for herself. I heard she tried to get a job in real estate. Didn't last 6 weeks. No one wanted to work with someone whose name was connected to a fraud scandal. I heard she tried dating again too. Men who were willing to overlook her past at first, until they inevitably learned the truth. Then they disappeared just as fast as they came. It wasn't just financial ruin Laura faced. It was isolation, reputation, loneliness, a slow, painful erosion of everything she once used to prop herself up. I wish I could say I felt good about it, that I celebrated every time I heard another piece of her perfect image crumble. But the truth? I didn't think about her much at all. That was the real win. Not that she was suffering, but that I was free, truly free. My own life, once held hostage by her silent resentments and secret schemes, started blooming again. At first, it was small things. I went back to the gym, not because I needed to prove anything to anyone, but because it felt good to take care of myself again. I fixed up the old motorcycle I had stored in the garage for years, a project Laura always rolled her eyes at whenever I mentioned it. I reconnected with friends I hadn't seen in forever, friends Laura had subtly pushed out of our lives with her passive-aggressive comments and endless, better plans. I took trips, short ones at first, a weekend camping, a fishing trip to the lake, but then longer ones, places I had always wanted to go but never did because she didn't see the point or didn't have time. Funny, I thought, how much time there was now. One crisp October morning, standing on the edge of a hiking trail in the Rockies, I realized something important. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living, breathing, becoming someone new, someone better than I had been during all those years of walking on eggshells and pretending everything was fine. It wasn't about anger anymore, or revenge, or proving a point. It was about choosing myself. For the first time in a long, long time, I had nothing holding me back, and everything ahead of me. I even started dating again slowly, carefully. No games, no pretense, just simple conversations, real laughter, connections without the constant, invisible weight of someone else's expectations. It wasn't easy at first. Trust didn't come overnight, but it came, little by little. Looking back now, I realized Laura thought she had it all figured out. She thought betrayal would make her powerful, that stepping on the man who loved her would elevate her somehow. But real power isn't about crushing someone else. It's about standing on your own 2 feet, something she never learned, and something I, at last, had. Some nights, when the house was quiet and the fire was low in the hearth, I'd sit back in my chair, a book in my lap and a drink in my hand, and think about how far I had come. Not with bitterness, not even with sadness, but with gratitude. Gratitude that I saw the truth when I did. Gratitude that I didn't waste another minute living someone else's lie. In a strange way, Laura had given me a gift. The clean break. The hard lessons. The second chance at a life that actually felt like mine. She lost everything trying to take what wasn't hers. I gained everything by walking away. And I would never, ever let myself forget that.